Okay, so I like to start always by telling my guests that I will be doing them a disservice by introducing them, and I will not do them justice in terms of the interview style that I have. We are a mortgage company. My job is a mortgage banker, and we do this really as a means of trying to entertain, educate, just give people some, a little break from the reality and being stuck in their homes. And when I was introduced to Dmitry, and first of all, I've known about Dmitry for so many years, and when I first heard about him, he was truly somebody that I thought was an inspiration, a young guy who was just out there pushing and hustling and making a name for himself in the boxing world. And being Jewish certainly didn't make it any easier. And I was always fascinated by the story. And again, when I started to do these interviews with people, I knew that he was somebody that I would love to be able to sit one-on-one and go through his story and his life. And I'm so excited and happy that Dmitry agreed to join us. And with that, I wanted to say, Dmitry, welcome. Thank you for joining. And please introduce yourself and how you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. You said that you're a mortgage broker, but you got to be Michael Buffer or Jimmy Lennon Jr. for the time being for this interview. It's good to be on. I found out about you through Tamir Goodman, who's a good friend of mine, who's someone that I looked up to as a kid growing up, and he connected us. So Tamir is my hero. So he said that he had a great time being on your podcast, and I'm happy to follow in his footsteps. Just a kind of a short overview. My family immigrated here from the Soviet Union. Now it's Odessa, Ukraine. Came here in 1991 when I was 9 years old, and we went through the typical immigration process: welfare, food stamps, no English, getting used to new culture. It's the first time that I've seen Jewish people, religious Jewish people, walking in the streets. We moved to Kings Highway 27th and 28th Street, between 27th and 28th Street. So kind of the heart of Flatbush, pretty Jewish neighborhood. First time in my life that I've seen people with black hats and the cars stopping to drive on Saturday. And I knew that we came to the United States because Jews were not allowed to be Jewish in former Soviet Union. So, we came here with my grandmother, whose name was Ita. She went to Cheder before communism. So she gave us a little bit of Judaism. Anyway, so I always kind of had it in me to find out about my roots, to find out about myself. But my early experiences with getting to know Judaism didn't spark my flame. Some years went by. I started boxing at the Starrett City Boxing Club, which at that time was one of the best boxing gyms in the country, really in the world. Produced some of the best talents in the sport today and then. And I obviously stood out because of my background, but I related to the fighters in the gym because I also came from at least economically, from somewhere that wanted to fight their way out of their current reality. And during that process, my mother became ill with breast cancer, and through that, I met a religious person that introduced me to Chabad Lubavitch, to Rabbi Zalman Lieberov, who is the rabbi in Chabad of Flatbush, and through his persistence, I've decided to get to know him, and thank God that he sparked a flame in me, and I slowly started to progress in my observance in Judaism and learning about what it is, and my boxing career began to grow, or continue to grow, and at the age of 18, I became Shomer Shabbos, and I decided not to box on Shabbos anymore. And with that, I won the U.S. Nationals, as an amateur, and I won the Golden Gloves, and I got the outstanding boxer at the tournament. And then I turned pro, and I had won 4 different titles, and I had finished with a record of 35 wins and 2 losses and 1 draw. And towards the end of my career, I started promoting my own fights, and then it developed into a business, which it is now today. And we promote some of the best fighters in the sport, such as Jarrell Miller, Otto Wallin, Claressa Shields, 2-time Olympic gold medalist, unified world champion, Shohjahon Ergashev, and the list goes on. And we regularly promote events on Showtime. Our fighters fight on ESPN, on Fox, on The Zone, still relatively young in the promotion business. Probably the youngest among, it's a very kind of slim opportunity to be able to really have guys fight on television. And there's a lot of established folks that have been here for decades, and and that are that have been more established than I am. But thank God, one step at a time. One step at a time, we're making waves. So I'm happy to answer your questions.
That's awesome. That's a great background for us, and I really appreciate it. For such a young guy to have such a life that has manifested itself in so many different ways, I can definitely sympathize and relate to so much of your upbringing, my family itself. Also, immigrating from Ukraine, having to start your life again at age 9, going into a completely different culture, completely different country, not knowing much. I guess, why don't you start from that? How was it as an adjustment? Is that what pushed you into the boxing world, just having to fend for yourself and be on the mean streets of Kings Highway, or how was that adjustment, I guess, as a kid? Do you remember anything?
So I went to PS 197, which was a public school located on Kings Highway and 22nd Street, and I went into an ESL grade, 3rd grade. Fourth grade, and obviously, kids are kids. You don't speak English. You wear your clothes. I wore my clothes that I had from Odessa, which over there were cool, but here I look like a little Borat, So all the kids made fun of me, and you get into a lot of fights. You get into, it's obviously a initiation process, so to say. I remember that one of the popular foods here in the United States is pizza, and people eat it with their hands, and it was to me, like a real culture shock to see people eating pizza with their hands. And the taste of it was just foreign to me. But every time in the auditorium, once or twice a week, the teacher used to take us to watch, for those of you that remember, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Of course.
And their favorite food was pizza. So that kind of grew on me. And see, you get influenced by the media. I started to enjoy pizza. But it was quite challenging to adjust to new culture, to new language, to new music, to everything is new. And you have certain perceptions before you come to the United States of what it is by watching movies and by reading, but obviously the reality of what it is and the imagination are 2 different things many times. So I remember talking about challenges. Now there's food stamp cards, but before there used to be food stamp coupons. And going into a store back in both of my parents are educated. We lived a kind of a pretty good lifestyle back in Odessa. And going to Woolbaum's, for those of you that remember Woolbaum's.
Of course, sure.
And first of all, I just remember 2 things stick out in my mind. There was like a pile of fruits and vegetables that were mixed together. Some of them a little rotten, some of them good. They were 69 cents, and my mother used to take those. And then standing in line, and and most people paying with dollars and paying with food stamps, it just kind of separates you and puts you in a certain class, and that's for a young kid and for an adult, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to deal with, and fortunately, it made me want to get out of that reality. And another thing that I remember that we went to a store for my parents to buy me shoes. So they bought me sneakers. It wasn't even Payless. It was like a level. It was like one of these bodegas or whatever. And they bought me sneakers for like $5. And to me, that they were, the best shoes that I've ever had. But in school, I wore these no-name shoes, and like everybody was making fun of me because Jordans and all that stuff was back in those days was like,
Sure.
And I was wearing a level below Payless, So I just remember every day kids used to make fun of me about that. But slowly but surely, we try to climb out of that, and now I speak English and enjoy pizza.
Well, some things don't change. That's good. So I definitely appreciate that. So you started to box when you started to be interested in that kind of a sport. When did that happen?
So when I was in Odessa, I used to get picked on in school, and my parents, and I used to get kind of sick a lot and all that. So my parents wanted me to do some sport. When I was 7 years old, they took me to a karate place, and I really enjoyed it. And I got, and I showed some talent. When we came here, at first, my parents didn't have money to send me to a karate club. But then eventually, I think 6 to 8 months after we were here, they sent me to a boxing gym, to a karate dojo on Avenue X and Avenue X and Bedford Avenue. And the trainer's name was Sensei Paul Mormondo. And my parents only had enough money for me to go once a week. But Paul saw that I was dedicated and that that my parents didn't have the money. So he allowed me to come first 3 times a week and then every day. So I would go to karate every day, and I would stay for all the classes, like 5 to 8. And my talent for boxing developed in that karate place. And he and my brother suggested that I kind of move on to boxing because there was, if they felt there was real possibility. So I only knew of two boxing places in Brooklyn, Gleason's Gym and Star City Boxing Club. Gleason's Gym was too far from my house and you had to pay for it. Star City Boxing Club was also very far, but not as far. And it was a city-funded program. So I went to Star City Boxing Club. And my first day, I remember like it was yesterday. Walking into the gym, seeing so many hungry and talented fighters. And it's in a basement. And it was in the summertime. And it's a place that I later came to find out has no air conditioning and no heat. So it really, separates the man from the boys and makes you feel that you belong. So I walked in the Star City Boxing Club, and I was immediately, a sixth sense took over me, and I felt that this was a place for me. And I met Jimmy O'Farrell, who was the director of Star City Boxing Club, someone that has had tremendous impact on my life many years after, and that's how it started. Well, one of the things that I remember, most of the kids are from Brownsville, from Star City, and from other East New York, and from other tough areas. And when I started boxing, even though I stood out because of my complexion, because of my background, the other kids also came from tough upbringings, and boxing was a way for them to make it out. And so financially, we were in the same boat, and going to boxing tournaments and getting a free T-shirt and getting a free meal, and was something that we were excited about, and we kind of had many of the same aspirations and values, at that time.
Right. That's awesome. And is that something like when did you realize that you had like a real talent in terms of that you can do something more than just use this as an exit to try to escape from the norm? When did you realize that you were, you had something special, and how did you progress from there?
I realized it. I mean, I really realized it, and I believed it when I was 13 years old, and I really put in the work, to make it, to give myself the best possibility to make it a reality. And the fighters that I was training with were world, that I was surrounded with were world champions, national champions. I mean, even in the juniors, I mean, kids my age, multiple time national champions, world champions. I mean, it was really the highest level of talent that you can be exposed to. And so, and I, after a couple of months, I was I mean, sparring is like kind of imitation of fighting. And because I was different, who just said, David Haney, who's a WBC lightweight world champion. He's current now. He said, "There's no way I'm losing to a white boy." So you got a lot of, you got some slack for that. But that's the culture that you kind of exist in. So when I was boxing with kids, there's no way white boy is gonna get the better of me. And that grew on me, because when I used to go to boxing tournaments and I used to box and I used to get into into competition with a white kid, I'd be like, man, there's no way the white kid is beating me, man. So I can say that I never lost to a white boy, actually.
There you go.
So really from the beginning, and then going to tournaments, and my first tournament was a state tournament, and I won it, and I beat some kids that were, I only had two fights, and I beat some very experienced, good fighters, and I really, and then I got support and a lot of encouragement from trainers that saw things in me that I didn't see, obviously, because I was a kid. And I really, really worked hard and focused towards it since the first days, really.
So how does, somebody that young develop that discipline to really make this a commitment? What did you tell yourself? What did you think to yourself to push yourself to commit and to be truly successful at this?
Well, I always believed in God, even before I was observant. I always felt spiritually connected, and I felt that I had a gift for this, and it's something that I really wanted. So, and I used to watch, when I was a kid, I used to watch a lot of karate, kung fu movies, and in those movies, a lot of the stars train very hard to reach their goal. So, I also saw that my parents, my father, would go to school to retrain himself. He had a master's degree back in the Soviet Union, but he had to retrain himself. So he would work, and then after work he would go to school. And my extended family, everybody put in the work to make a life for themselves. And no pain, no gain. And you got to work, and you got to commit to wanting to be the best. And that takes. And I really knew from the beginning that to be good at something, you got to really sacrifice yourself. And I enjoyed the sacrifice, and I enjoyed the process. I enjoyed the pain of training, and sometimes not being able to sleep at night because you're so achy, and waking up in the morning and running before school, and then coming back and going to the gym. But I enjoyed that process, and it gave me focus. And when my mother became ill, and also even outside of that, dealing with all the issues of immigration, not having money, kind of standing out and being different. The boxing gave me focus and gave me kind of a second family to kind of stay positive and keep on track.
That's great. There's so many questions that I got before when I was mentioning to people that you're going on. They wanted to know just how did you, what were some of your toughest fights, and like how do you, like during the fight, what's going through your mind in terms of just preparing and even while you're in the fight? Any fights that were more challenging than others, and you had to really dig deep to persevere through them?
So, yeah. One of my most challenging personal experiences was when it was the time that I decided not to box on Shabbos anymore. John Veestra just sent me a text on Zoom.
Yeah, very true.
So at the age of 17, I decided not to box on Shabbos, and I got a blessing from the Lubavitcher Rebbe to do it. When I went to the U.S. Nationals, and I told the organizers, USA Boxing, that I wasn't going to box on Shabbos if I make it to the finals. And the way boxing tournaments work, it's an elimination process, and it starts on Monday, and Saturday afternoon are the finals. So at that point, I was not established as a boxer on a national level, I made it to the semifinals. In the semifinals, I was fighting somebody that was very talented, multi-time national champion, and I beat him, and it was a great upset. And I was interviewed by Dylan Hernandez, and if there are any sports fans here, he's now a writer for the LA Times. He covers the Dodgers. He was covering boxing for the Sun Herald, which was the local paper, covering the boxing tournament, which was in Gulfport, Mississippi. Anyway, he told me, Dmitry, we never heard of you. What a great upset. What can we expect from you in the finals? I said, Dylan, I won't be able to box at 2 o'clock on Saturday afternoon because I'm an observant Jew. And I observed the Sabbath, and USA Boxing told me that I would be disqualified. So I'm really caught between a rock and a hard place because it's something that I really wanted to. He said, well, forget about that. He said, you're fighting this guy, Ray Sanchez, who's a 10-time national champion. Like, you're not gonna, you're not the favorite to win. And you're not the favorite to win. So I said, first I'd like to get in the ring. So this guy Dylan Hernandez spoke with USA Boxing, and because of his influence, they changed my time, and I fought after Shabbos, and I beat the guy that was supposed to beat me.
Wow.
So personally, that was very challenging for me. First of all, to kind of go against the grain and go against the establishment in a way, and also at the same time fighting my toughest opponent, in my career, somebody that was so accomplished and was a very big puncher and whatever, and very talented guy, and so thank God I won. But before each fight, it's the most intense moment. It's really the most intense moment in one's life. Talking about myself, and the walk to the ring, before the start of the first round, it's all the pressure of the world is on you, and sometimes alien thoughts come into your things that have nothing to do with boxing come into your mind, but really, usually, training camp and the training environment for, let's say, 8 weeks leading up to the fight gets you in the mindset to be focused for the fight. When the fight starts, if you're in good shape and if you're connected physically and mentally, you instinctively react to the situations. You're tuned in to the voice of your trainers. Although when I used to fight in New York City, I do remember in the ring, I just remember this, people would chant Dima, Dima. So that stuck out. There were times at fights that things weren't going good, and I would sit in a corner. I was like, God, please help me. I remember my first fight at Roseland Ballroom. I was like, I don't know, 23, 24 years old. I got myself I just signed a new contract with a promoter. I leased myself a Lexus, and but it was like the beginning of the fight. The fight was even, or maybe I was losing by a round. And I remember I said in the corner, I was like, man, you better get it together because if you lose, no one's gonna pay for that lesson.
It's no better motivation than having some bills
Right?
to pay.
Yeah. So yeah, and you really have to use whatever motivation that personally is relevant to you at that time to push yourself to the next level. But I always believed that I'm meant to win. I always believed that I put in the work to win, and I put in the work to be victorious. And an old fighter who was a trainer when I was a kid used to say this to me all the time. He used to say, if you're losing every round and it's the 11th or the 12th round, you always have to believe that you're going to score the knockout, even if you have 10 seconds to go. So that's always been my mindset. And when you're younger and you go inside the ring, and that was always been my mindset, is that you have to really put your life on the line. And it's like, whatever happens, happens. But I'm focused to go through whatever pain or uncomfortable experiences that I have to go through to be victorious. And you really have to have that linear focus and that craziness in a way to be successful in that realm.
That's awesome, and that's amazing. And really, part of when I knowing a lot of these stories, not as detailed as you're explaining them now, that's exactly why I was determined to have somebody like you particularly, join me, because the environment that we're in, the world that we're in, there's so many challenges. People are stuck with a lot of changes, and you need that mental grit to be able to push through and motivate yourself, whatever it is, dig deep to be able to get through a lot of the challenges. And your story is definitely an inspiration. Your story, the fact that you came to this country with nothing, built your way up, pushed and fought literally for every single thing and every single milestone that you accomplished. Now I want to just fast forward to, because I really appreciate your time, and I know that there's so much more that you can say, but I want to now forward to the change in your life that pushed you into being a promoter. Like, when did that happen? Is that something that you always wanted to do? And how does somebody at such a young age have the guts to even dare to enter that kind of a industry?
I started to think about it maybe 2008, 2009. Started to think about first of all, I had the honor of being signed to some of the best promoters in boxing. My first promoter was Bob Arum from Top Rank, which is the number one company in the promotional boxing world. Bob is 88 years old, and still number one. So, I was always very, very, very observant of my environment, and always kind of looked at how things functioned, and was very fortunate to be exposed to such a high level of boxing, really, for my first fights. I fought on the undercards of Floyd Mayweather, Vladimir Klitschko, Paul Ayala, Eric Morales. Those that are on the chat that know boxing names, will know who those guys are. So Manny Pacquiao, all those guys. So I was really exposed to a high level of boxing, and from the beginning. So towards the right before I fought for the world title, I started to have these ideas and these thoughts. Then I fought for the world title and I lost. And I had gotten married a couple of months before that, 3 months before that, and I made a little bit of money for that fight. I made some money, bought myself an apartment in Brooklyn, and then I wanted to get back in the ring as soon as I could, but I was still under contract, and really the right opportunities didn't line up for me to be able to make the money that. Well, it wasn't even really about the money, but to get myself back in the situation that I felt I needed. That world title payday started to run out. I was getting nervous about ways to support myself and support my young family. And so I figured, and I worked out a deal to kind of release myself from my contract, or Um, and I said, why don't I form a promotional company, do it myself? And I was pretty popular in New York City at that time. And we put together a show from decision of doing it until fight date was like 5.5 weeks. And it was a sold out event, and it was a show that I headlined. And once that happened, you know, a lot of the fighters, so I have obviously good relationships with fighters, trainers, you know, for many, many years. And a lot of folks started to reach out to me for their guy to fight on my show, to fight on my card. So we had a couple of events where I headlined, and then fighters started to reach out to me that I felt were really talented and really good, and still were unsigned to the bigger promoters, which was surprising because I felt that they had the ingredients to be very successful. One of those guys who's fought for me in a second professional fight is Jarrell Big Baby Miller. He was supposed to fight Anthony Joshua in Madison Square Garden June 1st of last year. He's one of the top-rated heavyweights for those that follow boxing. And, you know, slowly but surely, it started to develop into a business. And really, you know, my career started to wind down. And, you know, as a fighter, when you're popular, you know, you have a lot of friends and influential people that you know. But then when I really stopped, when I stopped competing consistently, you know, I didn't really have a way to make a living, and it's very difficult for a professional athlete to just kind of reinvent themselves and get a different expertise. So I had challenges to finding ways to function outside, to make myself productive and to make money really outside of boxing. And I love boxing, and slowly but surely developed into a business. Thank God.
Right. And no, I see some of the names that you have that you've been promoting and working with. Very impressive list of people. And I guess just given the times, how has that industry, how have you been impacted now based on Corona and what's going on? Sports is pretty much at a shutdown. How's it impacted you? Where do you think it's going to be? And how do you see things changing around once, you know, the world starts to open up a little bit?
Sure, it's been very challenging. So we had the last televised event in the United States, which was March 13th, was our Showtime televised show. And then we had a big fight, Abdi Dafdaev, big undefeated heavyweight, was supposed to fight March 28th, also on Showtime. And May 9th, we had Claressa Shields, who's a two-time Olympic gold medalist. She's the unified middleweight world champion. She was going to fight Marie DiChiari for the unified junior middleweight world title. That was also going to be on Showtime in Flint. These were going to be two big events for us, and something that we were counting on. But unfortunately, you know, the world got affected by this pandemic, and well, I think that it's going to take a significant amount of time before events function at the same way that they used to function, you know, prior to this. In terms of gates and gatherings, I think that it's tough to predict, but it's going to be a long time before people go because before there's thousands of people at events, any kind of sporting events. In terms of, let's say, pay-per-view was a type of event that families, friends get together, people go to each other's houses, they hang out and whatever. I think that social context of our existence is on hold for a while. I think that people are not going to be so quick to go to each other's house for events. Certain people that they may not know really well. And that obviously affects business. I do think that at some point in a not too distant future, live events, there's a need for live events. And as soon as things are relatively manageable, sports is going to come back on television. um, uh, I'm not sure yet to what capacity, because, for example, college football, and there's 50,000 fans, I don't know, every weekend. Obviously, that's not going to happen. And that's probably going to have a significant cultural effect on the country, because I think football is a big part of our society. Boxing does not have as many participants and usually does not have as many fans. And it's much easier to manage fan-free events for boxing. So I think to some extent, they're going to be fan-free events. But it's going to be challenging to make it. It's going to be challenging to make it to develop the business to being as profitable as it was, because So first of all, there's stars, right, and then there's guys that develop, guys that use, that are kind of the opening acts for the big guys. And they use these platforms to build their records, to get experience and things like that. So it's going to be very challenging for the younger fighters, for the fighters that don't have a name for themselves yet, to stay busy and to stay active and to establish themselves. Because these televised events that are going to happen are only going to involve, the kind of the A and B and B listers, but the C and D guys that have dreams of being A guys, they're going to have challenges. But but it's also an opportunity, because there's always new networks and new platforms and new always new ideas of getting into the sports world, getting into the boxing business. There's also a possibility to possibly stream or televise those level of fights, and we're obviously exploring all possibilities.
Right. I mean, there's no question, you, with your career and the fact that you've adjusted countless times in so many different milestones of your life, coming to this country and starting just different aspects where you took your career and took your efforts into different levels, now all the way up through the promotion ends of things. There's no doubt that you can pivot, you know how to pivot, you know how to adjust, and you will definitely be on the front line of whatever innovation and new ways there may come to help bring boxing back. I hear what you're saying. It's definitely a sport where you don't have to have as many participants, and it'll be hopefully quicker to come back than other sports, which is great. Any last minute advice for anybody who's faced with conflict and struggle and challenge, people who just need to dig deep and dig down to give themselves that confidence and motivation to push forward? Any advice for people like that?
Well, I say it to myself, same thing that I try to say to myself every day, is to stay positive, to take it one step at a time, and to just to deal with the current situation, with what's happening at the moment. And sometimes that's difficult to do, sometimes it's difficult to live in the now when you have so many pressures and thoughts of yesterday and tomorrow. But it's something that I try to focus on. Not easy to do, but I think the key is to stay positive and to be as happy as you can be, because from a place of happiness, good things happen. So thank you for having me on, and I look forward to coming back.
Awesome.
I would love to repeat this with Tamir Goodman. Tamir, this is what I want to finish with. These folks.
First of all, Tamir is listening live on, watching live on Facebook, so he's definitely.
Oh, okay, great. So first of all, okay, great. So I would love to do this with Tamir. I want to say this, and I hope that many of the listeners that you have today were on with Tamir. When I used to go to James Madison High School, I was, already pretty successful, upcoming amateur boxer and involved in Judaism. And I remember reading Sports Illustrated and reading the Daily News about the Jewish Jordan. And Tamir was, I believe, the #1 rated high school player in the United States, or top. Um, and it really, as a kid in public school, listening to hip hop music and, you know, and being in a boxing gym, and yeah, it made me feel really proud and really inspired me and gave me direction to be open and to be outspoken about my Judaism. I grew up, you know, in Star City Boxing Club, and again, you know, stood out for my environment, and you know, and I could so relate to Tamir and was so inspired by him. And then maybe 10 years after that, I had 8 years after that, I had the chance to meet Tamir, and Tamir is my sports rebbe. He's an incredible, positive guy, and I feel so inspired every time I speak with him. So Tamir, if you listen to me, God bless you, and I love you, man.
He says, love you, champ. And so many people have been, you know, just from all the corners of the world. I hear so many people who tell me such similar stories about Tamir. So I echo your sentiment. He is a real inspiration. He's motivated so many people. He's caused so many people to truly embrace their personal life, their religious life, their spiritual life, and he's inspired so many. And I'm grateful to him, to you, and to all those who have joined and listened. And again, we should continue to come together to motivate people, inspire people, and hopefully soon, very soon, we'll be able to do it in person. And with that, I wanted to thank you, Dmitry, for joining us, for giving me of your time, and inspiring so many people who have been listening. Thank you so much. Stay safe.
Thank you.
And God bless. Looking forward to speaking.
Thanks. Take care. Thank you.
Thank you.